I was born and raised in a house with a bigger family in Jordan, including my parents, my grandparents, my aunts. And being the elder daughter of the elder son of the family, I was treated differently, and I was really favorable to my grandfather. So my grandfather was the head of tribe of our family in Jordan. So that gave me the opportunity to sit most of the time with him, attend meetings, and whenever he's hosting, with that used to be often, the leaders of the other tribes who comes and meet him, I was the only kid and the only person who can sit with my grandfather. So the stories that they used to say often about their adventures, the hunting, the travels, and so on, I was listening to all of this. And as a curious kid, and of course supported my grandfather, I was asking them, Uncle, why you're putting your gun here? Why you're wearing long dress, meaning the kandura? Why your mustache is like this? Why you're covering your head? All these questions were asked. And of course, politely, they look at me and they smile. But my grandfather used to tell them, she asked you a question, answer her. And that helped me to remember always that I have to keep asking until I get the answer. And of course, it was annoying for some, but it wasn't for me or my grandfather. So I kept asking questions, and I also, at the same time, I started to be interested more and more in the stories and the storytelling. Because simply, when you listen to all these stories, you get attached to the stories. And that's why I decided to join and study journalism. And I was so lucky that Jordan launched a new department for journalism when I graduated from high school. So I decided to register, and then, of course, the family celebrated. They all went with me to register. My parents came with me, and my father was so happy and excited that his daughter is going to university. And being a businessman, my dad thought that I'm going to inherit and run the business of the family. So he went straight towards the business. But I told him, Daddy, we're going left. And he looked left, and he said, that's journalism. And I said to him, and? He said, journalism? Are you studying journalism? I said, yes, I'm studying journalism. And he said, but the salary you're getting is not going to cover the jeans you're wearing. I said, well, it's my problem. I'll be responsible for it. He wasn't happy, but there was no other choice for him, because I already registered. Went back home, my grandfather was there. He noticed that there was something not normal in the eyes of my dad. He told him the story. So he said to him, if she succeeded, you'll be sharing the success. But if she failed, it's her responsibility. She took the decision, she needs to be responsible for it. And I continued, and I started journalism. I was the first also female to graduate from the same department. After that, I was lucky enough to find immediately a job in the leading newspaper in Jordan, Al-Ra'i, and also I became the managing editor of a Jordan Times, which is also the only, at that time, English newspaper. I had the chance to cover the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I went to DC for almost 2 years, 3 weeks in DC, 1 week back to Amman. And after 1 full year of negotiations between the Israelis and the Jordanians, they finally reached an agreement on the agenda. So I decided, of course, I'm not a PR person, I'm a journalist. I got it through my contacts. I went out of the hotel because the hotels were all bugged, and I'm a journalist, I have to be careful. I went to a shop, and that shop has services including fax. Anybody here remembers what's fax machine? Raise your hands. Few of you. So I went to a fax machine, sent it to my newspaper, we prepared it, and we published it next day. Now, to my surprise, my life is not always scoops. I also have some risks and challenges. What happened is that I published it, but in the middle of the night, with the time difference between Washington, D.C. and Jordan, the Israelis decided to attack Lebanon. So the Jordanian felt that it's not proper to announce any agreement with the Israelis while the Lebanese are being attacked. So they decided to cancel the press conference and the announcement and no meetings. But it's already in the papers, in Arabic and in English. But my editor-in-chief decided not to put my byline to protect me because he can take the full responsibility as an editor-in-chief. So next day, it was a whole chaos in the hotel. The Jordanians were panicking. They came and tried to knock on my door. I listened, and I knew that there was some chaos. Of course, I've been treated as if I'm a traitor. I don't care because I was actually paid by my newspaper. And I went back to Jordan. My editor-in-chief said to me, what you've done was the right thing. You got a scoop that people will talk about it for the coming 30, 40 years. And that was true, because up till now, people are writing books about the Arab-Israeli conflict, and they are mentioning about the scoop. Now, I stayed for 6 months, treated as the traitor in Jordan. I stayed away from attending some activities until one time, my editor-in-chief said to me, 6 months is enough. How about you go and cover? I was the palace correspondent for so many years. So I went to attend one of the activities, and I was sitting just literally at the edge of the hall. The king was attending, late King Hussein. So he saw me at the end, and then he walked and he came towards me. And he said, I haven't seen you for ages. Where have you been? So that basically turned the whole story, and I became the lovely Caroline. I'm not a traitor anymore. It went on, and that basically helped me to grow. And I traveled the whole world with the late King Hussein. I met lots of leaders. I learned a lot, and I kept learning until his death. And that's when I decided to stay away from Jordan and think for 1 year what I should be doing next for Caroline. I went to London to get my master's. I got a scholarship, and that's where I met CNN. And CNN gave me the challenge to launch the first Gulf operation and also the first Arabic services. That was end of 2001. Lots of challenges and lots of great stuff. But what did I learn? I learned that 2 things important. Of course, getting the truth, it's a must-do. There's no negotiations about it. But I also learned that there's nothing called a problem. It's a challenge. If you believe that it's a problem, that means there's a block that will prevent you from crossing. But if it is a challenge, you will give it a try and try to maneuver, push things. And simply, if you have a brain, there's nothing called impossible or called a problem. Nothing impossible as well, it's the same thing. I personally believe that you should always, when you write it, you should always write it, I am possible. Because there's nothing called impossible in our lives. Everything we can find a solution for it. And that's what makes us different from others. And these are the things that I usually focus and train and insist on my team that they should always remember. There's nothing called impossible, there's nothing called a problem. And actually, if you see my team and come and visit me, you'll see that none of them will mention these 2 words in front of me. Same thing with those that we've been offering them as an internship. We trained and offered internship for hundreds of students and journalists. I go and train also with my team lots of young journalists. 2 words are vital, not to mention if I want to get the truth. That's very important. Now, after training all these journalists, I started to think that with all this booming on social media, everybody is telling stories. Do we need to tell only our stories to journalists to tell it? Or what? The answer is big no. We started to train for the last couple of years to focus on non-journalists. We train them how to tell their stories. We give them the techniques and the power how to tell their stories. You don't need to be empowered to tell your own story because you are the most powerful person to tell your story. If anybody is carrying your story, will miss the feelings, will miss even the breathing while you are telling the story, the face expressions, the body language, every moment of this story is part of your body. You're the best person to tell this story. You only need to get the techniques. And that's not difficult. It's always possible. We trained more than, so far with an agreement with some other entities, NGOs and other entities in the Arab world, we trained in the UAE more than 150, and we're still having agreements with these entities for the coming 3-4 years. And when you listen to their stories, how these trainings about storytelling help them to change their lives and transform their lives, it's amazing. You need a story to tell your family what you're doing. If you want to get promoted, if you want to apply for a job, if you want even to share with your kids what you're doing, you have to tell your story. I was attached to the stories when I was listening to the heads of tribes telling the stories, and I carried it with me, and I became a storyteller. Now, to conclude, I would like to leave you with 3 things. These are the takeaways. Effective storytelling is a skill that can be developed over time. You don't need to say, I don't want it or I cannot get it. Everybody can get it, no matter what type of education, where you're coming from, or who's giving you. You don't need to get it hard on yourself. You own your story, and therefore you are the best to tell it. I said it just now. If I tell your story, I can be the best storyteller in the world. I will miss some human element, the human touch. You're the best person to say it. And finally, storytelling helps us all to inform, influence, and inspire others. Lots of people are really desperate for a story to lift up their morale, or to stop them from committing a suicide, or leaving jobs, or doing anything wrong to their lives. But be careful when you tell your story from within. Okay? Don't tell it because you have to tell it. If you don't feel that you want to tell your story, don't do it until you feel. Feel it perfectly and find the right moment. The important thing I want you to know, that as long as you're telling a true story, it is going to be a spot on. And I really encourage you to join my journey as a storyteller. Thank you very much.